Alright, so Guardians of the Galaxy 2 review. This is a retcon review I had out before, but I'm condensing it for time. And admittedly, my first reviews were pretty low energy and well, anyways, let's get into this. So, Guardians of the Galaxy 2. At the point in time when I went to see this movie, my best friend had hung himself. I tried to go to Star Wars The Last Jedi for escapism. Think, what could go wrong? Bam, everything. Worst, horrible movie ever. It felt like the death of a franchise. So, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I had high hopes going into this one because the first one, it did this massive undertaking of introducing the cosmic universe, this very layered, complicated thing, the Infinity Stones, all these elements, and it just brought it in seamlessly. It integrated it seamlessly into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it had a bunch of great characters. There were hints at things in the first one that would be brought up in the sequel, and they are fleshed out. They're well done. So Michael C. Rooker and Sylvester Stallone reunite for the first time since Cliffhanger in this movie. That was interesting. You've got the old school Guardians of the Galaxy, the Ravagers, who are shunning Michael C. Rooker's Yondu, for getting involved in child trafficking and stuff like that. And his character really goes from that badass anti-hero with an edgy sense of humor and kind of asshole demeanor to this fully fleshed out character that's riddled with regrets and he gets really humanized in this film. Yeah, he's absolutely great. He has a lot of bonding with Rocket, as he's somebody who can show Rocket the error of his ways before it's too late. Rocket, for the most part, he just comes off incredibly obnoxious and unlikable throughout the entire film. And there's a lot of mean-spirited jokes and things like that as they pick on Groot and they throw Rocket and Yondu. The Ravagers turn on Yondu. So there's also a lot of mean-spirited jokes from Drax as he has this kind of buddying romance with Mantis. And Mantis looks great, by the way. Awesome to see her introduced. Uh, but for the most part, this movie just feels really, really disjointed. And Rocket is not the... He is really bad. He intentionally steals from the people they took a job for, knowing how they take offense to it. And, that pretty much divides the team, derails the whole thing. This movie is largely character driven, and there's really not much plot to say. I mean, the third act, when it comes down to facing the main villain, it feels like it's just kind of dropped upon you, even though he is nicely set up. Over the course of the movie, it just feels like the best way to put it is the film doesn't necessarily feel like it has a real villain, or it feels like it doesn't have a point A to point B. It just feels like it's a bunch of stuff happening. So there's a lot of 70s and 80s music in here. Or the music does come out just sort of organically from within the film itself, and that is actually pretty exceptional. And there's a lot of video game references, Galaga, Pac-Man. But at point in times, the movie feels like it is a parody of itself in a lot of the kind of 70s and 80s stuff that they have going on with space tech, and it's really, really strange. There's a lot of jokes that are just fall flat for me. They're just rude, obnoxious, and not really all that funny. And sometimes there's some really good jokes. The de-aging of Kurt Russell is absolutely exceptional. Those scenes where he meets Peter's mother and all that, but there are some really, really dark stuff going on in this movie. There's some torture, there's a lot of humiliation, there's Peter Quill finding out that his father's pretty much a mass murderer of his own children. Like, he's just this whore that goes around planting his seeds everywhere and murdering his children when they don't live up to his expectations. I think Mantis and Peter are actually brother and sister too, but it never really gets brought up in there. And then you have this whole stuff happening with Gamora and Nebula that just kind of feels like it's just happening out of nowhere. And then there's like a drastic shift in the relationship. I mean, you do see hints that Nebula does care for Gamora, but it just takes this like drastic shift where they kind of just band together and stand up to Ego in the end. Ego, it's very unfortunate that he meets his end in this movie because there's a lot that could have been done there, as was done with Galactus in the comics. But for the most part, the movie just doesn't live up to the first one for a bunch of different reasons. As the first one too, you don't really notice in the first one that there isn't much of a plot because the world building and the characters are just so entertaining and so great that you don't really notice that there really isn't that much of a plot. Here, however, since a lot of the humor and stuff like that is more of a negative experience than the first time around, there's a lot less of that. It's obvious that there's not really much of a plot. Act 1, you got them take this job from the Sovereign. The opening scene, that brought a smile to my face. That was a great music scene and a great battle with a great big monster. And then after Rocket steals from the people they took the job for, the Sovereign, it just kind of goes downhill as the Ravagers come after them. The Ravagers turn on Yondu. Rocket, Groot, and Yondu are split up from the rest of the gang. And, for Peter, and there's some stuff happening between Peter and Gamora, kind of romance there, but Gamora is feeling like pushed away as Peter's family, the Guardians were his galaxy, so that's the best way to put it. And now that his father comes into the picture, and it just he starts to take a shine to his father, who was never really there for him. Meanwhile, like, you have a character like Yondu, who was really like a father to him and was really there for him. But Peter just takes such a shine to Ego. And the world, Ego's planet, is really beautiful to a degree that when you find out most of that only part of it is beautiful and the rest is barren and lifeless. And then you start to find out what he's really all about. There were some pretty good action scenes in here, but there were a lot of scenes that just felt like too much of a parody of itself, and it's just not as likable as the first time around. But I really enjoyed Kurt Russell, his performance. Everybody's performances were pretty great. Groot had this kind of adorable baby thing going for him, but he wasn't as likable in the first film. Rocket was a lot less likable than he was in the first film, and in the first film he was even obnoxious to a pretty great degree, where he wasn't very likable in the first place. Mantis was a great introduction. There's a lot of funny stuff in here with her and Drax. Yeah, some of it falls flat, but some of it's absolutely great. The music in here is still good. The mention of Adam Warlock there at the end, that was awesome. You get more tie-ins with MCU Easter eggs, and Peter Quill, damn good character, still very good. You feel bad for him in here, and what happens with Yondu, that absolutely heartbreaking right there. That sucked because the death of my best friend at this point in time. And also, I had made a video for another person that was my best friend before then, and he died too, and I had made this tribute video to him that revolved around the Dixon brothers, that also involved Michael Rooker as Merle on The Walking Dead when he died. So I do have a strong attachment to this movie. It is strange. I'm strangely bonded with it, but I can only give it a 6 out of 10, and maybe that's some of my some of that's my bias towards it because all the negative things that were happening around the point in time of the movie and all the reminders in the movie itself of the negative things or whatever. But I thought the relationship between Yondu and all that was very beautiful with Peter in this movie. It was awesome. Funny thing to point out is Kurt Russell's ship looks like an egg, or like a sperm. Uh, God, that dude's such a whore. Like, how many siblings did Peter have that he just slaughtered? Uh, anyways, the Ravagers, the original Guardians. That was really interesting to see. It'd be awesome to see if they get their own movie. Before Infinity War came out, I was hearing that they were going to be in it or something, but they weren't. So where do they stand now? That's something that's really interesting to me, and I want to see where that goes if anything ever comes of it now. But who the hell knows? I thought Adam Warlock would pop up in Infinity War and be a major part. I thought he would maybe pop up in Endgame and be a major part, but I don't think any of that's happening now. And it just reminds me of how they kept putting Ant-Man in the Avengers. That's one. So, Adam Warlock's getting the Ant-Man treatment here when he's very pivotal to that whole story, and just like Ant-Man's very pivotal to the original Avengers team as well as Wasp is. But, they just keep getting brushed aside. Like I said, I'd give this movie a 6 out of 10. Absolutely exceptional soundtrack, and the way they did it with having the music come from the movie organically from within the film itself. And all the actors were pretty great, but Rocket sucked this time around. So, Nebula had some good moments, but for the most part, I just found that a little bit of that stuff, like with the way she was coming after Gamora so hardcore, I don't know. And then the sudden shift, the bond where they, like, sort of stand together. But I did like how they all just came together, though, in the end and took down Ego. That was really awesome. But 6 out of 10. Comment your favorite moments down below. Your least favorite moments. Your favorite character. Your least favorite character. I thought Nova might pop up in here or something like that, but that didn't happen. How do you feel about all this stuff? What do you feel about the Adam Warlock stuff? I am getting the sort of Ant-Man treatment with. Anyways, stay awesome. Rock on.